What's up, guys? This is the Buried in the Bones podcast. I guess this is episode 10. And today we have a very special guest. I was thinking about maybe doing an intro for him, but I'll break it down just a little bit and then he can explain the rest from there. Rich Mulder is our guest today. He is a very good friend of mine. He is also the guy who got my journey started. So back when I was in Knoxville, graduating from University of Tennessee, I found Rich based on Google research, and I found him. I sent him a terrible cover letter, and maybe he thought it was cute or shitty, and so he entertained me for a little bit. But Rich is former West Point graduate. He was in the Army. I believe he was a captain in the military. Is that true?
That's right.
Oh, all right. So he was a captain in the military, West Point grad. He then left the Army. He went to the University of Arizona State University. He got his master's degree in exercise science, and then he ran his own gym. He got a gym, I believe, at like 27 years old or something like that. Did a bunch of really cool things here and there between. Worked for the Fisher Institute, went to Taiwan, coached a lot of cool people, but the rest of that is for Rich to explain. So Rich, if I miss anything, would you like to explain who you are?
Thanks, man. That's cool. And I did not think your cover letter was silly. It did not entertain me. I've been impressed with you since day one. Still am. Love everything that you're doing. I love being a part of your journey. I think you've kind of always been on that journey yourself. I don't think I got it started for you. I think that's all you. But man, I really appreciate it. I love being on this. I love hearing what you're doing, and I'm sure some of my background will come out, kind of as we go. But you kind of hit the timeline, the external timeline, pretty good. Yeah, I graduated West Point in 2009, served 5 years active duty, 1 deployment to Afghanistan, Bronze Star. Combat Infantryman Badge, came back, got out. We can kind of get into all the details, but I knew I wanted to be a coach. I went to Arizona State University, got my master's there in exercise and wellness with a concentration in fitness and conditioning. Did a ton of stuff in between all that, and it was kind of a act of desperation almost to open up, to really go for it and open up Liberty Performance Training in Phoenix, where you and I met eventually. And man, since then, so much else has happened. I ran that company. I started it in 2015, but I really started it in earnest in 2017 with the big location, and I just sold it this month of this year to the general manager, Zach Miller. That's been a whole process of figuring out as well. But it's been quite a ride, man.
And Zach listens to this podcast very frequently. As a matter of fact, he just tagged me in I guess Liberty just did this really cool event, and actually it looked awful. Actually, it looked terrible. I think it was like 7 rounds, 29 back squats, 135 pounds, and a 400-meter run. Yeah. And sounds terrible, but awesome. But I think what got me interested in Liberty is you had I remember reading a quote that you had. It was on your bio, and you guys were not hiring at all. And you're scrolling through, and there's way more to your background that I will have an intro for before this. I'll kind of get all the nitty-gritty, especially with some of those details that we maybe humbly leave out. And what I saw was give a shit, know your shit. And everything about the gym was it just felt professional. It's hard to explain. 1, it felt badass. 2, it was very professional. And so a lot of that I feel like you got from your military background, I would assume. And do you feel like what got you, why West Point? What made you do that? Have you always been a scholar? Have you always been someone with an athletic background? I don't know if we left this out. You were also a strongman athlete. So what got you into West Point, and then how did you get from West Point, and why strength and conditioning?
Yeah, the short answer is no. I wasn't always going to do that. I was in high school when 9/11 happened, and 9/11 changed everything for me. I remember exactly where I was, as most people do that day. But I remember that day being like, "Oh, I'm going over there. I got it. I wanted to fight against that so badly." And I was ready to just like enlist as soon as I turned 17. My parents were the ones that really like slowed me down, and they were like, well, like let's explore our options here, like, you know, because I was an athlete in high school. I was a 4-sport athlete, track, football, basketball, weightlifting, and I did well in school. I was, you know, mostly straight A's unless I was, you know, messing around a little too much. I got a few B's in there, but I had no idea that the military academies even existed at the time, and my parents and my track coach, who was also my English coach, who was a big time mentor of mine, Mr. Chris Iverson, they were the ones that really kind of like just opened that door for me. I wouldn't say they like pushed me in that direction, but they opened that door for me, and I got accepted into a rising junior summer camp at West Point, and I took one step onto the campus, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I have to go to school here. This is the most incredible thing. And anyone who's been to West Point will know what I'm talking about. Like, it's the amount of history. You know, there's a saying actually in the history department at West Point. I was a military history major, and it's like where the history we teach was made by the ones who teach it. And it's really cool, man. It's really hard to explain. It's just it's the honor of my life to have gone there, honestly. And I always say that if the active duty military would have been like West Point, I would have stayed in for a full career. It was very different than that, but you know, West Point was really, really integral for me. I went there. I was 17 when I went there. Honestly, I barely got in. I was like, you know, I was the number 2 in my district, and the guy ahead of me dropped out at the last minute. So I found out in like May that I was going to go to West Point in June, and it was just a tremendous day of my life, you know. But I was this like cocky, arrogant 17-year-old who just like thought everything was easy, and I was just going to keep on screwing around and figure stuff out. And I got there, and like, not only was I a small fish in a huge pond, like I felt like the smallest fish. Like, everybody was in better shape than me, smarter than me, better looking than me, more athletic than me, like everything. Like, I was like such a turd, and it was the most humbling experience of my life to that point. And it was just so important for me. And I remember coming home actually, and from that first, it was Christmas time was the first time that I got to come home for my freshman year. And I just remember looking at my dad and being like, Dad, you were right about a lot of things, and I was wrong. Sorry. So
you said if active duty was the same as West Point, you'd been there forever. This is maybe an assumption outside of the experience of it all. Was there like was it a top-down thing? Was it like the way it's ran in comparison to how functional West Point was, like how systematic it was? What was the turnoff?
Yeah, there's probably like a little bit of exaggeration in me saying that. I don't know if that's 100% fair, but yeah, it was very political. Eventually, like, you know, especially in the officer corps, as you kind of rise through the ranks, it gets pretty political, and there's not a lot of space for failure, and so there's not a lot of space for growth. And at West Point, it's the opposite. Like, it is the best education in America. I cannot believe like the way that I was pushed there, and just cultivated, like everything. It was beautiful. Looking back, while I was going through it, I was like, this is the worst. I don't know how I'm going to do this. This is so hard. But there was so much room for growth there. And when you go active duty, it's like all that growth is already expected of you. And so it's like, nope. So like, this is your micromanaged route that you will be taking if you want to do this. And you know, another part of that is and a lot of it just has to do with my personal experience in the military. Like, I know there's good leaders in there, and I know there's good units, and you know, and the soldiers in my unit were incredible. Like, they were the most amazing people I've ever met. I'll go to my grave saying that the most talented, brilliant individual in the United States is the American infantryman. I promise you. But in my experience, I felt like a lot of people were all talk, in particular my leadership. And they didn't really like back up their talk with action, and that's kind of like what I'm all about. And I found it hard to identify that and express that in my 20s, but I'm finding it easier now. And and I look back at those leaders who were in their 30s and maybe early 40s, and I'm very glad that I got out of the military. Very glad. I'm also glad for everything it did for me.
How old were you when because I don't know if people understand the timeline. You went to West Point, you graduated. That's when you went to Airborne, Air Assault, Ranger School, right?
Yep.
And when you graduated those, you had probably 2 years? I mean, how did that timeline work? Because you bought your gym in 2017. I mean, you were 27, 28 years old. So yeah, what does that look like?
Yeah, I was a kid, man. It's so funny when you look back, you're like, oh, you're just a baby. But I was 21 when I graduated West Point, and then right after that, you do all your Army schools. So it's like your advanced, combat training, your infantry officer basic. Airborne is when I did that. Some people do it earlier. This is just my timeline. I did Airborne. I had already done Air Assault. I did Ranger, and then I did Striker Leader. I went to my unit. And then, I think it was about 2.5 years before I went to Afghanistan in 2012, so 12 to 13. About 2.5 years from graduation. 3 years actually, almost on the nose. And so I was a kid, man. And then I got out at 26 years old.
Damn.
Yeah.
So you're 24, 25. I'm assuming as a captain, you're an officer, so you're leading people. How big of a group would you lead at 25, 26 years old? Like, how many people were you responsible for? And it's kind of crazy. You think back, like, all the world's best leaders historically. I mean, a lot of those guys were super young, and so we forget we have like modern day people who still get in those positions, and you're expected to perform. At some point in Ranger School, you had to get fit as hell and take your fitness seriously for the first time. But in some regard, I bet you were kind of where maybe you and I now are kind of like, oh, this is like the experience of being like a human being, and this is like something I do for me. At that time, this is an assumption, and I might be wrong, but I bet you were like clockwork. I bet it was this like, you were a machine. You got fit as hell specifically to get through and endure a pretty badass training regimen. And then, you're 25, 26 leading how many people?
Yeah, so, gosh, there's so much to unpack there. It's always funny every time I talk about the military, because like it's like I'm remembering it all over again as like new stuff comes up. It's funny because at West Point is when you're first expected to get fit as hell, and like you better be in good shape, and it is so stressed there, especially if you're going to go into the infantry, that if you are not in as good a shape as your platoon, like you suck. Like you do not deserve that. You should be in better shape than everybody, and there's quite a bit of like shame that comes with that if you're not. So that's the first time that you're like really ramp up and get like fit. And it's funny you mentioned Ranger School, because you do have to be in shape for it, certainly, but within the first like maybe 2 weeks, maybe even a week, like you're so broken down already that it doesn't matter. Like, you're averaging 2 hours a night of sleep, and you're not eating at all. I went in at 196 pounds. I came out at 161. I'm 6'2". And there's guys that had it way worse, and that's after like 5 days of like fattening you back up. And and put that in perspective, I'm like 235 today, so it's like a huge difference. But to answer your other question, I deployed to Afghanistan. I was really lucky, honestly. I got 24 months of platoon leader time. Most people don't get that much, and I had 2 platoons. I had a line platoon to start in garrison, and then I took a specialty platoon. I took a mortar platoon overseas, and we went there with 27 guys, and we gained 2 soldiers while we were over there. Came back with 29, and that's I'm really proud of that. I'm really, really proud of that. It's the most important thing I've ever done, for sure.
That's wild. I have a question. I'm gonna ask about that in a little bit, and I'm going to loop it back to that exact thing you just said at the age of, you were what, 26, 25, 26 at that time probably, ish. So what was the turnaround? You get out of the military. We're going to unpack a little bit of leadership in that because I think it transferred over, obviously, very well to your business. And so real quick, will you help us and me understand the turnaround? So you got out and it's like, I am 27. You had this crazy life journey, different than mine. And, it's really cool to see like how that happened for you. You were still able to come back, get your shit together. You went to Arizona State. You got your master's program, which is amazing. And then 2 years, you're a gym owner. Why strength and conditioning? How'd you end up there?
Yeah, and I hope that this is like the meat of what we get to talk about today, because it's like they're so complex. And I think that when I got out, I certainly gave the aura, or I had the aura, and I gave the appearance of having my shit together. But dude, I did not have my shit together whatsoever. Man, did I not. And I didn't realize it. There was so much that I didn't realize. But before getting into that, like, I did know that I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach. I knew that. I didn't know how I was going to do that. I didn't know what to do. But I knew I loved it because I really truly fell in love with training in Afghanistan. I blew up to 240. I was a very different person. I was like a very aggressive person. I feel like I needed to be. I can appreciate that about like that situation. But it served me very well. It's funny, like, the Afghan people are like a very small people. They're very frail and very, well, I shouldn't say frail, they're pretty hardy people, but they're very skinny, thin, small. I remember this one time, we're on patrol and this car pulls up and it's this tiny little car, and this guy gets out of it, so first it's just like pulls up and watching us. And I'm looking up and I'm like, get out of your car, fuck out of your car, And this guy like stands up out of his car. First person in Afghanistan that was ever taller than me that wasn't American, He's huge. He's like 6'6", and I'm like, that guy's not from Afghanistan. I'm like, where are you from? Pakistan? You Taliban leader? And he's like, no. We swapped his hands, everything, like, didn't find anything, and literally, like, I think 15, like, we let him go, couldn't do anything. 15 minutes later, we started taking contact, but, it's just like, it's just funny to think about, but whole point of that was that I was really just like, I loved training. I loved being physical. I loved like putting everything into the gym. My platoon sergeant, I call him my platoon sergeant. He was technically a section leader, but he was my right-hand man, Tony Sheffy. We would train like all the time, and our whole platoon followed our lead. And so all the mortars, we were always in the gym. We were always freaking training, like getting huge, getting strong. And it was just so different than most other people trained in the Army. It's like very much a running man's army. And that really like was when I just completely fell in love with fitness and saw literally like how fitness was saving our lives, like in so many different ways. I was like, man, I just want to do this forever. And so I applied to ASU's program because, again, like I didn't know where I was going to go, what I was going to do. I'm from Arizona, and so that made sense. I had never lived in Phoenix before, but it made sense to go back to Arizona for me. A little bit of familiarity. And I got in and started kind of going from there. I had a job at LA Fitness for a little bit, and for like literally 3 months or something, and I was like, this is so stupid, what am I doing here? And I quit, and I poached a bunch of clients, and I took them to my I say that with like zero guilt, because like if you're trying to get in shape, don't go to LA Fitness, go to Bo. And and that's when I started Liberty. I started it out of 1,000 square foot shitty little studio gym in the ghetto in Phoenix. That's kind of where it all began. Wow.
How long were you in business before I ran into you? How long was Liberty there?
You were 2018 is when you came, or?
No.
19?
Nope.
17?
Nope.
It was after COVID?
Yeah. I think, you know what? So let me paint the picture for everyone. I was at the time a senior in college when I found Rich, and I was doing like part-time firefighting. So I had like a 19 credit hour semester my senior year. I was dating a girl at the time who was going to Columbia, South Carolina for like school, and I was like, okay, so I would have my semester hours throughout the week. One weekend I would go to Columbia, South Carolina and go through the firefighting school. I would test and do the physical testing as well. And then the other weekend I had an uncle who was in Atlanta. So I would go from class to South Carolina, class to Atlanta Firefighting Academy stuff. And I did that for about 3 months before I decided this is dumb. And then I decided to take a chance on myself. I started looking up gyms. I was fit and I enjoyed getting fit. And so I did a lot of research. I found Rich. I found some other folks. And he was not hiring, just so you know. They actually like usually only hire in-house, and it's very high-level coaching. And I had 0 certifications, none whatsoever. Everyone requires them, but I decided to write a good letter. So, yeah, he was like, if you make it to Phoenix, if you can afford it somehow and you can make it out here, you know, I'll give you a little interview. And he did. And eventually I didn't actually, you know what? You didn't have the space for a coach then. You were like, damn, you're cool, but can't do it. And I was like, oh man. So yeah, that was like 2021, 2020. It was around that time. It was around COVID. And that's a whole nother story, I'm sure. How'd you do with COVID, man? How was that? How was that being a business owner?
Yeah, that's crazy. I feel like you and I have known each other for so long. It's awesome. The COVID was insane. Obviously, it changed everyone's worldview. Almost, 100% of us have a different worldview after that. And I still remember, because they shut down gyms and salons and whatnot, and pretty much everything in Arizona for at least a month, and they were pretty hard on gyms. But I remember waking up that next day, the day of the shutdown, and being like, no one's gonna do this, no one's gonna actually shut down. And I'm like the only one on the road and going into the gym, going into work. And I was like, oh shit, nobody's out here. Everyone is shutting down. I am so wrong. John Erickson, love him to death. He's my head coach at the time. We stayed up and we just called and talked to every single member that we had at the time, which wasn't a lot. And we just said, hey, we're going to stay open. We're going to be private. Don't post on Instagram. Don't use the parking lot. If you want to wear a mask, great. If you don't want to wear a mask, great. I'm not your dad. Do whatever you want. It's not up to me. Do whatever you think is best for you. If you want to pause your membership, pause it. If you want to donate to us, donate. If you want to cancel. Not my choice. Your choice, not mine. And I think that was just so missing during that time period. Everyone looked to someone else for answers instead of finding it for themselves. But it was a really stressful time. We had the health department knocking on our door a couple times, gyms all around us getting fined and having people show up their door and closing. And, our members turned the health department away at the door, which was amazing. If you've ever been to Liberty, there's no windows, it's a dungeon style gym, which really worked in our favor. But we used to keep the door open. It's locked now, 100% private, whatever Zach's going to do with it. But at that time, it was locked, and we kept that model. And we turned into this little underground speakeasy of a gym during COVID. And I had so many people, especially veterans, first responders, firemen for sure, saying just so thankful that they had a place to train, because without it, they would go crazy. And we had two, in that period of about 2 years, we had 2 schizophrenic breaks in the gym. It was such a hard time for people's mental health. I think those mental health struggles have really continued. And that was probably what sparked my kind of the next step in my own coaching, was some of that, not all of it. But yeah, we became this, this little speakeasy, and that really put Liberty on the map, honestly. That's when people started talking about us, and we started developing a name, which was really, really cool.
It's kind of interesting. I wonder, even me, so when I was a student, COVID had happened, and the habits I developed during that time are still with me today. There are phases throughout like my day where I catch myself just like, man, the doom scrolling happened for me during 2020 when I was in school, and frankly, it was very easy. Like, respectfully, you didn't learn a lot when you were in school during that time, but also like, I wonder how many habits, not just habits of like action, like actionable things that I do outside of what I'm doing now, but just thinking habits, and how those things are still with people now. Like, it's kind of fascinating. I feel like no one's dealing with the same. It's not the same world, man. It can't be. I don't feel like it is.
Yeah, I think to kind of piggyback on that, like, people have formed attachments to things, and they are, whether those are political identities or habits or bad habits or identities in general, they've formed these attachments, and attachments are very difficult to let go of in the first place, and these attachments are like stacked on top of these habits, and they've created these narratives in their head that are so difficult to get rid of. And I think you're 100% right. Like, this is definitely a different world now.
When I first came to Liberty, it was 3 days. I had interviewed. This is hilarious. I had 13 interviews. And at the time, every gym, you were the only one. This is how I knew. I was like, that's the one. I have a notebook, actually, where I was writing down every single gym that I interviewed with. Like, this one's good, this one sucks, this one sucks. Out of the 13 interviews, I had 9 workouts in 3 days. And you were the only gym that sat down and was like, what do you know? Like, what do you believe? Like, who are you? Are you a good man? And then, and you were actually the only one that was honest. It's very interesting. I bet you learned this in the military, just like very abruptness with love, and you were like, hey, we don't have the room, but I hope our paths cross again. And that is actually how Rich denied me as a coach. He actually denied me as a coach originally. And during that time, I went to work at a D1. I started getting my own reps in. I was in Gilbert, Arizona. I started working at like a sports medicine clinic with some pretty high level athletes. And then I met a guy named TJ. Shout out to TJ, but he's listening to this. And we ended up becoming members of Liberty Performance. And that is how I don't even know if we were friends yet, man. I think we were like, I just knew you, and you kind of made me nervous. Rich is not a small guy. He's like, how tall are you? 6'2"? 6?
Yeah, 6'2".
Good God. He's 6'2", 235, 240, like, big guy. TJ's also not small, but everyone in Liberty Performance was a very high-level athlete, incredibly strong. I was definitely the weakest person in the gym. Like, it wasn't even close, but...
I was going to say, I was very small compared to everybody else in the gym. Like, there's some beasts in that gym.
Rich is 6'2", 235, you heard it here. He thought he was small. I don't know if anyone really knows how strong people can be. Liberty housed, I think, 4 world's strongest competitors in the 90 kg world's strongest man at one point. They had an Olympic lifting. The USA Olympic throwing team trained there. And we got to work with like Sean Donnelly and a lot of the throwers from that team. And the new owner, Zach, is a strong man. I think he's a national competitor, right?
Yep. Last year competed, and I'm sure he will again. Super strong.
Just like absurd athletes. But Rich, if you don't mind me asking, this is maybe for some funsies, but okay, so I met you. How, in your eyes, did it work where we merged coach into friends? How did that look like in your eyes? I've never actually asked you that before, so this is the first time everyone hears about it.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I probably have a rosy memory of it, but it's funny. Like I think I've told you this before. It's like I think good men are really hard to find. I think good men are really hard to come by these days. I don't know if it's always been like that. Probably. And so when I do find a good man that is like emitting the same frequency or at least a similar one as me, I try to keep them in my periphery. And like, it's not saying that I have never like messed up a relationship before. I definitely have, but I do my best to like keep those good men around because I think we need each other. And it's just natural. Like it wasn't any kind of, it wasn't any kind of like manipulation on anybody's part. I think it just unfolded naturally. Like I love seeing people who work hard. I think I'm really attracted to intelligence in men, and women of course, but I'm really attracted to your intelligence. I think you're a really smart person. And I think you were like so way ahead of your years, which I remember. I think I didn't even know that you were 10 years younger than me until like a year or two into our friendship, and I was like, what? And I thought for sure you were like my age, it kind of like blew my mind. But I don't know. I think it was natural. Do you have a different memory of it?
Oh man, so what's actually really interesting is the first time I interviewed was actually with John Erickson. That's his last name, right? Okay, yeah. John's also gigantic. He is Nebraska's strongest man. So you guys are I'm painting the picture. I'm the tiniest human to walk through that facility. So I actually did an interview with you at first. I met you when I became a member, like a legitimate member. We had talked, and I just thought the gym was really cool. I remember a particular song was playing, and, I was in the midst of like, man, I just drove out west. I just moved out west. It is the desert. It's the West, man. Like I had like this kind of romanticized view of going out west, driving through, seeing saguaro cacti, and oh man, it was so cool. I was extremely poor. I was not doing well financially, but I just felt like I was doing this badass thing. And there was a song that played. It was Black Creek by Brent Cobb. That song played while I was doing power cleans on one of the Olympic lifting platforms. And I was on the bike, and you came over, and you were just like, hey, man, like, do you remember me? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, Rich essentially was like, would you ever be interested in coaching? And I pretty much was like, of course. Yeah, I absolutely would. There's some backstory to that. We'll leave that out for now. But it was a perfect timing. I think it felt right. And one day I get an email from Rich asking me to join his team. I actually sat down on the couch and went back to my roommate's our apartment, TJ, and I was like, should I? And TJ was like, of course, you've been talking about this gym since you moved here. And I still have my cover letter printed out, and I have that notebook, and it sits kind of like in this cool little spot on my side table. It was just a really big part of how I started. But man, I think one day I had coached. I feel like I got there and it just picked up. I was like, holy hell, I'm a full-time coach now. This is insane. And then we got lunch one day and we talked about anything other than sports. I think we talked about philosophy, life, and a little bit of life experiences. And it was like a perfect combination of I'm meeting men, out here, and it's no bullshit. You were kind enough to introduce me to Iris. I think we went to the wilderness at the time. Was it?
Right, Easy Wilderness.
Yeah. That was the first time we had hung out, and I think you asked me about a little bit of my life, and as I started talking to you, I asked about yours, and it was just really cool to just talk to another human across the nation, and just almost have like a carefree, like, this is me. There's not much, I don't know. It was pretty awesome. Yeah, it was a good time.
I think you and I kind of share that like philosopher's gene a little bit too. Like my favorite thing to think about is thinking, and my consciousness just loves to like chase its own tail around, and I enjoy that. I think it's a really powerful thing to do, and I've done it for my whole life, and I think you have too. And it's natural, when you can just have a conversation, even like the one we're having right now. It's just like, it's very easy, it's very flowing, it's very natural, and there's no ego involved, and it's just always been like that between the two of us, and I've just really appreciated that.
Yeah, actually, as a matter of fact, it's been recently, I feel like, in our lives where there was a while where you were like, there was like a big brother thing, like it kind of felt like you're my big brother at some point, as well as a friend. Like you were definitely a mentor in the business. And then it was really cool that you could navigate the boss. You were like, did a really good job of being like, hey Bo, like, love you, also we need to get this done. Or, that was a cool thing to be a part of. But yeah, man, we still like started talking, and like we were being able to disagree with people. That's interesting. I feel like that's uncommon these days. Is if friends, and you referenced this in my wedding. He did a speech for my wedding, and he referenced scorched earth and how prevalent that is in men these days. And I would like for you to unpack that. What does that mean? What do people? What do they need to hear about your view on men and scorched earth?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier, the ability to navigate a relationship where you have some sort of like legitimate power, like you're somebody's boss, or you outrank them, or whatever. You're their supervisor in a business or an organization, and you don't have to be a dick. Like you leading from love is something that I think I've always done, or I've always tried to do. I'm not perfect at all, but like I've always tried to lead with love, and I think my platoon will tell you that. I think anybody that has served in any capacity, like with me, or I hesitate to say under me, but like as a subordinate relationship, would say that. And you mentioned that earlier, like give a shit, know your shit. Just that's like number one on my coaching philosophy, always has been since I wrote it forever ago. And right underneath that is don't make people look or feel stupid. And that's something that people do all the time. And I've just never understood it. Not saying that I've never done that to somebody. I have. But especially now, as I'm just keep trying to be better, man, it's so important that you don't do that. And so many men in particular, they're just ruled by ego. And actually, I think this is like such a cool thing to unpack, I think, because in 2025 right now, you've got a really interesting dynamic that's developing between men and women, and masculine energy and feminine energy. And I think like there's been this like bounce back from our parents' generation and their parents' generation, where like men were in very traditionally masculine roles, and they embodied this masculine energy, which wasn't always a good thing. There's lots of like this, the idea of like the patriarchy is certainly like this real thing that is gross, honestly, and it's not helpful, it's not love. And on the other side, like this kind of like the idea would be like subservient, like feminine energy. And that's not really true either. And so we've kind of like, you see this like shift into like women have become like, it really embraced like their masculine energy as well, because we all have masculine and feminine energy. And they have kind of said like, oh, I can have a career, I can be an individual, and I can do these things, I can take on these more, like masculine roles, and that's awesome, right? Like it's wonderful. And men have done the other thing, like, oh, I can take care of kids, and I can talk about my feelings, and I can be emotional about things, and embrace this like feminine side. But I think there's like this pendulum shift that's kind of like maybe gone too far, because at the end of the day, like men and women are different, and we have both of those energies, and it's about finding your unique balance of those energies. And so in reference to kind of like this scorched earth policy, that would be like the really masculine man who is just like, I take what I can, I take what I can from this land, and I ruin it, and then I move on to the next, and it's just one after another, and that is such an ego-driven life, and there's no fulfillment, there's no purpose in that, and it's really sad that so many men kind of like are this like red pill, alpha brain, whatever, and they choose that. On the opposite side of that is like the blue pill, like, oh, everything's fine and everything's okay. And it's like, no, I know that like if you are just like sitting back and letting life happen to you, particular as a man, well, maybe not as in particular as men, but if you're just sitting back and letting life happen to you, there's no fulfillment in that either, and you're not pursuing your purpose. And so it's about finding this kind of like harmony between the two, and that's a really difficult thing to do.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting you said that. I feel like, and I read a lot of this like Stoic philosophy, but one of Nietzsche's biggest complaints about it is the I think people can use that and justify too much passiveness, where their ways of thinking is almost like a way to kind of back-endedly just be lazy. It's, okay, I'm too passive, don't worry about it. Things are out of my control. But what if you can make action? What if there is something that you can do that is heroic and courageous and like necessary? I think sometimes Nietzsche in particular got me thinking this way a little bit when I was thinking about it. But yeah, I believe that is something that's kind of common now. It's like, I think we're all really freaking smarter than we believe we are. There's a lot of dumb people out there, but they're smart enough to justify their inaction too.
And I think it might have been Nietzsche that was kind of, I don't remember the exact quote, so it's like paraphrasing, but he talked about like, it's not morally superior to not have claws and pursue peace. Like, it's morally superior when you have claws and choose not to use them. And so, like, I think that's a really important distinction. And so many people like are not pursuing, especially like that, that the early, we'll say men, right? Like, I think so many men these days are not pursuing that sharpness, like that edge, that like, it doesn't have to be violence, it just has to be purpose, and it has to be a mission. And I think that's really important in a man's journey. Yeah.
What's a good first step? Let's say, I don't know, there's probably a lot of dudes listening to this. There's quite a few, I bet, and some of them are interested in what it means to be a man or just an adult, and men and women both. What's a good first actionable step? Is it fitness? Is it your mind? Where would Rich go?
Yeah, I mean, the best answer to that is it depends, right? But it's like, it depends on the individual. And I think we so often, it's so easy nowadays because we've got social media telling us what to do every time we wake up and pick up our phone. But, it's this paradox that, like, in order to pursue something outside of us, we have to go inside first. And like, I think like the number one step is becoming radically honest with yourself. That is the thing, and that is so much easier said than done. It's not becoming radically honest with others, it's becoming radically honest with yourself and determining what narratives you have built up in your head. And Jung, I know you love Jung as much as I do, and it's like, individuation, it's pursuing individuation and being able to identify the differences between yourself and your ego. And man, that's something that took me you're like light years ahead of me. Like, it took me so freaking long to even be able to consider what that was. And I think that pursuit inwards is step number one. And that's like, that is never ending. When I went to Peru with the Heroic Hearts Project, I think it's probably a good time to get into it. I went to Peru with Heroic Hearts Project for 3 ayahuasca ceremonies in 2023 that changed my whole life. And it wasn't the ceremonies themselves that necessarily changed my life. They did, but it was the work after. And when I interviewed for that trip, it was specifically for combat vets, and the guy interviewing me was he was a combat vet as well. And I remember going into that interview and being like, man, this isn't for people like me. This is for guys that were like picking up their buddies' body parts out of buildings and stuff like that. And I was like comparing my trauma with theirs, and which I now know is silly. Like, we all have trauma, like, and that doesn't have to be from war. So he asked me, like, eventually, like, tell me about your combat experience. And so I tell him, and I'm very like upfront with him. And then I'm like, but it sits pretty well with me now. I had some nightmares when I got back. Like, I don't anymore. I had some panic attacks, some like anxiety when I got back. I don't anymore. I'm like, it's all sitting pretty good with me. That being said, like, I really struggle with alcohol. I have really impulsive behavior. I've like burned really close relationships to the ground. That scorched earth that we were talking about earlier, that was what I was doing. And I just know that something's wrong, and I can't figure it out. And he kind of like laughed, I remember, and he's like, well, it's not exactly normal to volunteer for a job that requires you to kill people and get shot at. So for most of us, our trauma happened from before we were in the military.
Yeah. Well, it was like in addition to everything else also.
Sure. And then it just like chicken and the egg thing, right? And then it's just like, it just compounds. And then, I always say like, when you're in the military, you lose your identity like when you go into the military, because it break it down and build up a new one. And then you lose your identity when you get out of the military too. And it's very confusing. And so when I went down to Peru, before we had taken any of the medicine, and we can get into like my relationship with that now later on. But this brilliant guy, Nick, he was talking to us on the way. I remember being in the van, crossing this bridge, and him telling this story. And he was talking about the noble king and the court jester. And I think this analogy is so perfect, and it's what really allowed me to kind of like start the process of individuation intelligently and realistically. And he said, we all have a noble king or queen inside of us that knows right from wrong, knows good from evil, knows what's best for her kingdom or his kingdom, and just is born with that. They're of royal blood. This is the noble king. And in their ear is a court jester. And this court jester is our ego. And the court jester has been around forever. The court jester protected the noble king or queen when they were a kid. And they didn't have all the tools to rule their kingdom properly. And the jester is just doing the best he can. But he's just a court jester. He's not a king or a queen. And so being able to separate, like, okay, when is my jester trying to tell me things? And when is he not? And you'll see a lot of people, especially in the spirituality space, that encourage basically complete ego death and removal of the ego. And I disagree. I don't think that's helpful. I think, at least for where I'm at right now, maybe it will be one day. I don't think pure enlightenment is possible for most people. Maybe it is. I don't know. But being able to identify that jester and identify that ego, and then really take control of the volume knob and turn it down when we don't want it and turn it up when we want it. So if I'm working with a pitcher right now, I want his ego dialed up to 11 out there on that pitching mound. I want my brain to be lying to me all the time about how I'm the best pitcher in the world, how I'm going to throw this cheese, I'm going to strike this dude out, all of this. I want that ego up to 11. And when I'm not doing that, then we turn it down to 0, But having control over that knob is really individuation. And I kind of got on a little rant there, but it was fun.
That's awesome. You mentioned, we are going to talk about that. We have some really cool things to talk about. And that's a good merger back to, you mentioned, that was a combat vet thing. You had an interview for it. Let me ask you, so we got involved with MVP, Merging Vets and Players. It's an organization, you could let me know if I'm explaining this correctly, but it's an organization that is, I guess, nationwide now, and they work with combat vets and ex-professional athletes, and I don't know, the suicide rates for those two groups are pretty freaking high, and what they are doing is they're trying to help with an identification issue, and so we got involved with that. Liberty was selected to be the home base for the 8th chapter of MVP, Merging Vets and Players, and we were the home base, man. So, you know what? I would like for you to tell me your eyes or your view on that, and then is that what got you into the combat vet space? Because you have something going on right now that is very much inclined with that.
Yeah, it's really cool, man. What a story. COVID was the thing that first kind of opened the door to it, because the only people that I saw that were espousing some of the same beliefs about individual decisions and freedoms were other veteran entrepreneurs. And so I was like, oh, that's cool, because prior to that, I was like, I don't want anything to do with the military anymore. I don't want to go to the VA. I don't want to talk to an Army vet. I don't want to have, that's the old me. It's my past. Forget about it. And I just wasn't able to look at it. and it's very different now. But that kind of like opened the door to it. And then you're absolutely right. When Merging Vets and Players came in, and we'd shut the gym down every Wednesday night, and we do like that workout, 20, 30 minutes, nothing crazy. But the important part was the huddle afterwards, where it's just, I think they've started opening their doors to all veterans. At the time, it was all combat vets and former and current professional athletes. And we would do that huddle, and it was just peer support, and it wasn't necessarily people asking for advice. It was just people coming to be seen and to be heard and to talk about the things that they didn't feel comfortable talking about with anybody else. And this like source of like tribe was, and this source of identity that is just such a huge part of success or failure in our lives, that's missing in a lot of our lives after we leave the military. It was found again. And I just started watching, people's lives be saved, people talking about losing loved ones and moving through that, and people talking about addiction problems and recovery and like really intense trauma from during the military, before the military, childhood, like really intense things. And I watched all these like, a lot of people would like classify us as like these, trigger puller, like cavemen talking about these really deep, complex, intense things and confronting it together. And it blew my mind, man. It was so beautiful to see, and it was so powerful. I that is definitely what pushed me into the space. I was like, I have to do more. I also felt just called to do it. I just aligned really well with who I am, and it was a natural step for me to kind of get into the space, right after that. That was a highlight of,
I'm not going to say highlight of my life. It was insane to be, man, you know what? This might be a cool thing for us to figure out, lessons of endurance, strength, power, because when I got into MVP, I went from, okay, here are some guys and gals, men and women who were my heroes. You put these folks up on a pedestal, and now I'm telling you to go do this workout, and I'm having to lead you guys. And also, like, I got to speak, and people were listening to me. And, like, there was at some point at 25, 26 years old where it was like, oh shit, I'm like kind of a leader in this situation. And the biggest insecurity, man, I always had, and this was when I initially met you, and you have helped encourage me that this is not true, but we have, and everyone has, a completely different life journey, and traumas are certainly different, but they are not to be compared. And for a while, that was what I did. I compared the hell out of my stuff and kind of disregarded it because I was like, well, it doesn't compare. It doesn't touch what these folks have been through. So, God, that was so cool. That was very encouraging. But you have said something that I've wanted to get into for a little bit, and we've held off until today. The lesson of endurance and your view on it. You went through COVID, you went through the military, you went to Afghanistan, you've done a combat tour, you have led people, and you have been victorious in all of those things, which has been really awesome. You've also had to deal with your own shit, and you've had a lot of your own past. What is the lesson of endurance in your eyes from a business owner, an athlete, a man who's now on his new business venture? What is that to you?
Man, that's a huge question. I have, James wanted to. I'm not a Christian. I love so many things about so many religions, but I love, the quote, consider it all joy, my brother, when you encounter various trials, for the testing of your faith produces endurance. I got that tattooed on my leg after Ranger School. And,
wow.
Long time ago. And I think, for me at least, like, endurance is what I resonate with. And so I think it's different for other people. I think some people are like have strength inside of them in a different capacity than I do. They have power. They have these different qualities. But endurance is what resonates for me. And I find myself thinking about it often throughout my life. I think about it all the time now, and really, actually, recently, I think endurance. Man, there's so many places I want to go with this, but recently for me, endurance has come with quite a bit of acceptance, and it's the acceptance of suffering. And like, when you can accept suffering into your life, no matter how great it is, if you can accept it, you can integrate it and you can get through it. And it doesn't mean that it's easy. It doesn't mean that it's fun. It's not joyful. Like some people talk about, like, oh yeah, we're always walking up a mountain. You have to learn to dance up it. Like, I don't think so. Like, that's coming from someone who maybe hasn't experienced some true suffering before. Maybe, I don't know. But I think that, like, accepting that you are on this path and that there is going to be suffering involved is really important. And it was going back to this Peru, I learned so many things in Peru over the course of 3 nights with ayahuasca. And in my second ceremony, it's funny, my first ceremony was like it was a ceremony about strength. I went in there asking for strength, endurance, and knowledge, and I got each of them on sequential nights. It was wild. The first night was so amazing. It was beautiful. It was so much strength involved. I spent the whole night with, like, bears and just, it was so powerful for me. I loved it. And I showed up the second night and I was like, oh, like, hell yeah. Like, I just get to go hang out with bears again all night. And then I had maybe the worst night of my life that night. And man, I just spent the whole night in my own internal hell. And I was so remorseful and so sorry for some of the things that I've done in my life. And I also lost my mind. I thought I was becoming a schizophrenic. It was so terrifying, so scary. And I just stuck with it for hours, and it was brutal. Long story short, I come to again. My faculties are coming back a little bit, and I sit up. I'm so messed up. I can't even grab the toilet paper that's next to me to wipe my face off because I've been puking all night. Snot ripping out everywhere, puke all over. I try to get it on my hands. I can't even get it, so I put it down. I pick up my blanket and I blow my nose in my blanket and just wipe my face with my blanket. Put my blanket down and just head first into my blanket of snot. And I just start laughing to myself, and I start kind of giggling, and I have this instant recognition that for me, one huge part of endurance is humor, and it always has been. And it's like, oh my gosh, if I can make light out of things, even out of this horrible situation that I'm in, because at the time I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna shit my pants. I was almost gonna shit my pants, and I'm just like, then I start giggling at myself, I'm like, they're gonna make you shit your pants. This is crazy. And all of it comes to me in that download, and I'm like, wow, you asked for this, man. You asked for this. And I was like, I did. And man, I am a pretty resilient person, aren't I? And then it's just this, and so now, since then, being able to accept suffering has been so much clearer to me. And it's made things not necessarily easier, but it's made things make more sense. So gosh, man, I don't know if that answers anything about your question, but
no, I've always been, I'm curious on what you think about this. I feel like you have, like I said, you've been through a different intensity. You have experienced a different, just like the nervous system thing you referenced earlier. Your nervous system has been on dial 10, for a heightened or a sustained amount of time, some of which almost no one's going to experience, frankly. I'm curious on I feel like what everyone's trying to get to is a little bit of perspective, and it seems like ayahuasca has been a tool that you have learned how to use, and it is a way for you to help people with those who have experienced this heightened sense of stress, trauma, etc. And it is the dose or this stimulus needed to help learn these lessons of endurance, acceptance, love, etc. Where can people look in your eyes? Okay, if they can't get there, where can they find a little bit of perspective? How can they learn their own lessons of endurance? I mean, what does that look like to you?
Yeah, that's a question that everyone has to answer for themselves, right? And if you're curious enough, like there's no coincidences, like it will find you. And there's many ways to do it outside of ayahuasca. That was the thing that kind of like really changed everything for me. But it doesn't have to even be plant medicine. It can be many, many things. I think like having a child sometimes, that's not like the answer. That's like, if you're having problems, don't have a child. That's not what I'm saying. But it's like life event, right? That like a life event that can happen that like shows you so much about yourself. There's like a million things that you can experience that show you your path and like your purpose a little bit, and just like gets you into like more of this flow. And kind of to go back to the nervous system thing, you know, I think there's like such a powerful way to combine like Western and Eastern thinking. And I think people want to do like either or all the time. And they're like, oh, like, but science says this. And it's like, okay, yeah, but then Eastern philosophy says this. And like, no, I think we're kind of approaching this crossroads that's really cool. And I think we are this like modern miracle of modern science, which I think it really is. It's amazing what we can do. Is kind of like intersecting with this rediscovery of ancient mysticism. And, you know, whether it's ceremonial plant medicine, whether it's like Hermetic philosophy, or really it's spirituality. And it's not New Age spirituality, it's spirituality, period. And I think that there is this intersection that's happening, and I believe that this intersection is it's the point in the curve where we're about to go exponential. It's like this inflection point. And I truly believe that the best is yet to come. But to go back to what you're saying about like the nervous system, I think a lot of people that experience like a significant event of trauma, like combat, you know, my buddy Tommy and I have talked about it, and it's like, man, like the flood of emotion that you get, like when bullets are flying and you have to make decisions and there's like an explosion, there's like shit happening. It's really wild. Like you've experienced the pinnacle of what your nervous system is going to do for you. And after that, like it's really hard to like come down. And you know, and so when you think about it, like you have another spike in your nervous system. Especially in the veteran community, like there's a lot of people, or not even the veteran community, but just that's who I'm familiar with. But people who have experienced significant trauma, they tend to kind of go into like freeze mode. And so like our nervous system is fight or flight, right? And when we experience that, we're supposed to be able to come down from it. But if we spend too much time dipping into fight or flight, and our nervous system doesn't know the difference between an actual situation and the memory of a situation, it just responds, then we get into freeze mode and we are no longer able to use our nervous system properly, and we can't get into fight or flight. We just freeze, and that comes with all sorts of physiological side effects that are very negative and take a huge toll on us. And then those are exacerbated by our lifestyles a lot of times today, where we're not taking care of our bodies and we're not feeding ourselves properly and getting good sleep, and we're spending too much time doom scrolling and feeding this fake dopamine spikes in our head, and we're putting garbage in, and we're not doing the things that are required to get ourselves regulated. And so now to kind of get to that question that was like, you know, what are the first steps? Like pursue regulation. And you know, pursue regulation, whatever that is. I think that's like the first step for most people. And so if it's fitness, then go for it. I think fitness is, you know, it was huge for me, kind of just hanging on, right? Like, and it still is huge for me. I absolutely love it. I look forward to it every single day. But maybe like that's not it for you. Maybe it's meditation, or maybe it's church, or maybe it's like something else, you know, like whatever it is that you want to do. Maybe it's freaking, you know, writing or some other like creative outlet. Whatever it is for you, like that makes you feel at peace. Like all the stories about like, you know, oh, I can't do this because X, Y, Z. I can't pursue this business because I have a family to feed. I can't do this because I'm not an athlete, or I can't, whatever. It's all from a lack of honesty with yourself. And because it doesn't matter, like, yeah, you're not going to be able to do it as well as the best people in that field. That's okay. Like you can still do it. And like pursuing that regulation kind of lets you, like, gives yourself permission to pursue the things that you are going to be fulfilled with. So yeah, I think that regulation, and for me, that is meditation for sure. It's yoga practice, it's fitness, it's eating good, it's sleeping good. My biggest block was alcohol. So for me, like sobriety is a huge thing. And the amount of narratives I told myself surrounding that was crazy, man. I struggled with it so badly. And I just had every excuse in the book. But it took some actual honesty, and it took working with it and falling off the wagon and then getting back on and falling off and getting back on. And then finally that moment came where I was like, damn, okay, there it is. And there's this progressive way of thinking that I just love. And when especially when it comes to behavior change, and we start in this part of us that is it's unconscious incompetence, and we don't even know that we're doing something bad. So don't even know that we have a habit that's killing us, that is preventing us from accessing ourselves, everything like that. Unconscious incompetence. Then we move into this conscious incompetence phase. And the conscious incompetence phase is where we're like, oh, I'm aware that this is killing me, or I'm aware that this is preventing me from doing this, and how do I transform this? Then we hopefully move into this conscious competence phase, and that jump from conscious incompetence to conscious competence is so difficult. It's not like a rung in a ladder. You're floating between the two for a while, and then eventually you just 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and then we get forward and we stay more in this conscious competence phase until maybe eventually we get into this unconscious competence phase where we don't even have to think about it. It's maintenance in our lives. This is what we do. And I think that is such a better model than some of the models that have been introduced about behavior change to this point.
I love how you said that. And you said something to me earlier today, and I thought it was a really good message for everyone. But, okay, what prevents people from making movement, right? Movement via okay, I'm writing today, or I'm going to go do yoga for my brain. It's the most fundamental maybe historic thing that people use to root back into themselves. They use their body to get back to their mind, but something that you said was, okay, I had to think about this for a second, and you always do that shit to me. It's funny. You said there's no shame in it. And I think a lot of people almost are blocked by the presence of shame, or the fear of. And so, yeah, and I think the modern sense, and I think fitness professionals in general do a really shitty job at, I think they're either not educated enough, they don't love people enough, or they just like hearing themselves talk. And so it's all hard stuff. It's you got to do hard things. It's hey, sometimes putting pen on paper is hard enough, or figuring out or becoming aware enough to be okay, I'm not comfortable in my body. How do I get to yoga? Although I'm ashamed of it, how do you escape shame? I don't know if I mentioned this. You are not just a CSCS certified strength conditioning specialist, which is the hardest exam to take in the strength conditioning industry. You're also a life coach now. And who's how did that happen? And then as a life coach, how do you escape shame?
Gosh, man, I wish I knew the answer. If I had the answer to that, then I would be, rich and famous. But I'm certified, psychedelic. So I'm a certified psychedelic integration coach and transformational recovery coach through Being True to You. Wonderful program. I learned so much, and that team is brilliant. Deanne Adamson is the company owner. She's absolutely brilliant woman. Learned so much from her. Gosh, how do you get through shame? I mean, the first step is acknowledging it, that you have it. I think that's probably the only universal step that we can take together, and sitting with it and just holding space for it. And I've talked about it before, and it's modern therapy is really good at helping us identify where things come from. So generally speaking, if you're struggling with something and you go talk to a therapist that's worth half a shit, they can help you figure out what it is you're struggling with and what the source of blockage is. And okay, so if it's shame, most of the time, for us, shame and guilt is some way that we grew up, because we learned it as kids, and it's no, if you do bad things, then you don't get rewarded, and so you're a bad person, you're a bad boy, don't do that. And when you're a good boy, you get this, and and when we do something bad, then we get shamed for it. And so it's something that we learn over time, and it's not our parents' fault, it's just the way of the world. And so the good thing is now we're adults, and we can kind of dissect this and do something about it. So what therapy does is it allows you to kind of like understand that source, but what it struggles with is helping you move through it and get past it and like change that behavior. And that's why I pursued coaching instead of therapy and that kind of more like academic route, because I'm interested in helping people like move forward and like find themselves and get through it and then get going. And like your time's running out, baby. Like you gotta go. Let's get after it, you know. And that doesn't mean like, okay, let's rush into things and freaking no. Like let's figure it out and then go, you know, and then take a step, you know. Like let's change your direction a little bit and get you moving again. But gosh, man, shame is so difficult, and we all struggle with it. But recognizing that it's there, and then trying to find its source, maybe, and then forgiving that source and accepting that suffering into your life. And saying like, okay, like, does this action that my shame is blocking me from, is this action going to help me, you know, pursue my best self? And then it's like, yes, okay, so how do I get there, right? And that answer is different for everybody.
When you sent me that earlier, you've always done a good job. You know what? We had really good conversations in Puerto Rico. And for those who don't know, we did a joint bachelorette trip to Puerto Rico. It was awesome. Rich was in my wedding. He was a staple of that. But shame and then like past life, and I don't know, man. I think some of that shame in general is something that has prevented me in particular. I'm sure you have felt the same way, but you know, maybe in starting a business or like trying to pursue a podcast, and it's like, well, past me did this, and you said like, you know, you are sober now, and you know, I'm sure you had to battle that before you pursued your next venture, and that's called Apricus Coaching as well, right? That's the business name, and you know, how did you had to endure that? You probably had some strength required to make a choice to be like, you know what, that's not me, and this is actually because I've endured this and I, you know, stepped on the other side of the coin of shame, that I am able to tell people that like I have earned a way to say this is what's on the other side of it. You know, what got you into Apricus? And then has strength and conditioning lessons been things you have taught yourself through that? Have there been physiological attributes that you apply to that, you know, your time in the military? What really rooted into your new venture being Apricus Coaching?
Yeah, discipline is probably the biggest part, right? Like discipline of a good strength and conditioning routine, of taking care of yourself, of eating well, and doing the best you can, right? Like there's such a discipline involved in all of that bleeds over into a well-lived life, and there's like such freedom and discipline. But I've kind of added to that now, in that like we have to have a gentle discipline, and like we're so good sometimes, especially if there's like shame and guilt involved, like in like attacking something really hard sometimes, like really, really hard, and then we fall off the wagon because it's not sustainable and we're not gentle enough with ourselves. And like that kind of goes along with like what we were saying earlier about like radical honesty with yourself. Like you have to start learning and keep massaging and keep learning when to be hard on yourself, like when you need to kick yourself in your own ass, and then when to be easy. And it's like when to go a little bit easy, when to take a knee, and when to breathe a little bit. But certainly, like, you know, strength and conditioning introduces discipline. I mean, discipline in the Army, like, I mean, discipline's always been, I say that lightly because I fucked off a whole lot in my life too, but you know, discipline has always been a major tenet in getting places for me. You know, it's the gentle side of discipline now that has allowed me to introduce even more endurance into my own life, and it's just so much more sustainable. And I use this metaphor a lot, you know, with people that are kind of, you know, talking about this type of thing, and you know, you don't have to like swim so hard all the time. Like you're swimming as hard as you can. I don't care how good of a swimmer you are, right? Like, you know, like if you're swimming as hard as you can, you're gonna burn out. And it's okay to like hook your elbow onto a tree or something that's in the river, and like pick your head up for a second and know, like, recognize when you have to do that, when you need to take a second, and you just hook in and you look around and you lift your head up and you catch your breath and you look for a better current, and you look for a current that's going in the direction that you want to go, and you try to shift into that current. And that requires like a lot of skill and a lot of effort and a lot of patience and a lot of forgiveness for yourself a lot of the times. But you get into that current, and man, you don't have to swim as hard, and then you can still swim hard sometimes, and you go twice the distance in half the time. And it's more of like this flow state. And so I think like slowing everything down and paying attention is really helpful. It is really helpful in that. And I really do think that like having a why and having like a form of like spirituality that you kind of attach yourself to, whether like no matter what, there's a million different roads that lead to the same place, in my opinion. I'm sure there's plenty of people that would disagree, but that having that thing that is like outside yourself, that gives you purpose and it gives you confidence and like allows you to accept suffering into your life, like especially on a divine level, man, is that powerful. It's so freaking powerful.
One of the most important things, this was also in Puerto Rico, cheers to that, but you told me I am removed from you in years of experience, but I think we may share this. We want to provide as much value and impact as possible. We like working hard. We want to go somewhere with what we're doing. And there was a phase, especially during that phase, man, I was incredibly stressed out, very worried about where I was going in life. There was a while where I went from, Phoenix and Liberty and working with like very high level athletes. And then, I got a job here in Nashville with Cal and I, and, it's changed the game. And, there's like tons of things that I've been able to explore with creativity and like the work-life balance, and, things change. But you told me there is sometimes things that you cannot account for, and the only thing that you can rely on is your self-discipline and self-love and the time required to get you wherever you're going. And that has been a really cool thing for me to navigate. I would say right now my lesson is endurance. Like I learned that through my own like physical training. I used to do endurance, and thankfully Richard is training me also, and he's trying to get me jacked. It's really cool. I have always done endurance stuff, and then now we're trying to apply that lesson, and sometimes that's really hard. And so, I'm no different. Rich is no different. There was a time in Phoenix where I went there, I got a job, I got a better job. Rich offered me, got that job, met my future wife, and then like multiple people had passed away, and then it was like, oh shit, now we're moving to Nashville, and someone else passed away the day I got to Nashville, and it was like, what the hell is going on? And I am so lucky that I get to grab the log in the river and, take my breath and, just allow myself to either drift this cozy little current, and then, if I find a safer way to passage, and I will hop on that. And that is, I feel like that's a life thing, and that's a really cool lesson to learn. That's how it's manifesting in my life right now. Do you feel like where are you at? Are you swimming, or are you kind of coasting, man?
I mean, I'm always swimming, right? But I'm always in the river, but it's, I like that. But I think it's so natural, right? Because if we're always trying to like pursue all of these things, like it's natural when we do get stuck to like approach it with a little bit too much hubris sometimes, and we have to be like a little bit, we have to remind ourselves to slow down a little bit, because it's like, man, like this isn't fair. Like I need this, I need to do this, and like we are attached to an outcome. And we started off this talk saying about like how people become attached to things, and like we do it too. And it's like we get attached to this outcome where I'm like, I'm not making enough money, and that's gonna make life better. I'm not living in the place that I want to live, and that's gonna make life better. And like, we think that we know better than the universe that is influencing us. And it's like, No, man, we don't. And if there is a problem, the way that you solve it, it's such a paradox. And it's like, and I have no proof for this whatsoever, but I do just like love preaching it, because it's like the way to solve that is to slow down and go inside and get curious, get grateful about what you do have. And that curiosity and that gratitude combined with slowing down and picking your head up and trying to breathe with the universe a little bit more instead of just breathing on your own as hard as you can, like that is what makes everything work better. And that's when things start like, opening up for you. I wrote about, come out in the newsletter tomorrow for Apricus about the discipline of love. And that's kind of, I really struggled to talk about this for a long time after my ceremonies with ayahuasca, because it was, if you have not experienced something like that, then there is no explanation. There is no explanation. If you have experienced something like that, you don't need an explanation. But that introduced me to like proof enough. All I needed, it was very real for me, proof enough of the existence of God. That's all I needed, right? Like, and certainly not a God like anyone else experiences it, right? Like we all experience reality differently. We all experience the divine differently. We all have our own interpretations and viewpoints and experiences, but that was mine. And after I got that, I was so hesitant to talk about it because I was like, man, people are gonna think I'm a crazy person and I'm just like tripping balls on ayahuasca, and I had this vision, and that's good enough, but I'm like, that's okay if you think that, because it doesn't change anything for me. Like it was real for me.
And you wrote about that, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, is this it?
Ah, there it is, yeah.
Yeah, Magic is Real by R.T. Mulder. What does T stand for, out of curiosity?
Timothy, my dad's name.
Oh, nice. He wrote this. It's awesome. You guys should totally go read this. If you are watching, well, you see it. Magic is Real by R.T. Mulder. If not, that is the title of the book, and that is Richard Timothy Mulder. Go check it out, man. Is it on Amazon?
It is, yeah, yep.
That is really exciting. I've always been inspired by it. I feel like there are people you need in your life, and this kind of is, well, you know what, you were just saying that, oh, man, I don't care what people have to say about it. It's like, hey, I'm sure you're like, hey, I'm normal. I have ran a business. I am very normal, we think, and I'm not going to explain myself. It's like either you can attach your assumption to it or you can get curious. But have you read that book? The four agreements?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's don't assume. And if you do, then well, you need some movement, and you need to figure that out. But how long have you been writing? I know it's like one of your favorite things. You've written a few. You've written that book. You've also written a trilogy, I believe.
Yeah, I've written 2 fiction novels, and yeah, that was my first nonfiction. I'm working on the 3rd installment of that trilogy right now. It's very slow going, but I'll hopefully have that published next year sometime. And I'm kind of like already outlining another nonfiction that I'd like to write, but we'll see. Like I think I need to kind of get some more experience, get some more practice, and before I actually kind of come out with that one. But yeah, it's exciting, man. I love writing. Writing is it's my passion for sure. Like as far as it's my creative outlet, and it's really important to me. I love sharing. But it's as helpful for me as it is for anybody else, especially in the nonfiction case. My fiction is not going to help anybody. I hope you enjoy it, but it certainly helps me, and it's just fun. I love it. I think I'll always write. I write something every day, pretty much.
Do you feel like you learned? I feel like West Point. This may be true or may not, and this is a good point for you to check my ass, but. I feel like good military leaders are very good writers.
Oh, I think that has been the case a lot of the time. Yeah.
Did you learn how to write in the military, or was that afterwards?
I learned how to write in high school.
Well, that's fair.
Really write, and like really consider things. It's funny, man. Like we kind of like, we have mentors and then we outgrow them, and then we have coaches and we outgrow them, or like life goes apart, or it's just like, it's really interesting. And when I was in high school, Mr. Iverson, I mentioned him earlier on this call, he was a Vietnam vet. He was my literature teacher through high school, and I think I've always loved reading since I was very little. He like really encouraged that like love of reading. He also encouraged writing, which I just loved, and I loved him. He was so important to me looking back, and I recently reconnected with him. We went years without talking, and then I tracked down his number, I called him, and we talk to each other, like off and on now, and he's just an amazing person. And now that I've had military experience, in particular combat experience, he's a lot more open with his combat experience, and holy shit, the stories that he has are just mind-blowing, what this man has been through. And then I think back to like that teacher that he was to me in high school, and that like he just cared so much. But that's who taught me how to write, was Mr. Iverson. And then certainly at West Point, like that love of writing was definitely what do I want to say, like encouraged more and cultivated more. And it was really hard to write there. Like certainly like they taught me how to write nonfiction, that's for sure. As a history major, I was writing a lot. My thesis won a few awards for, I did it on, it was called The Consequences of the Cold Warrior's Creed, which was pretty cool. It was, but it was, I've always loved writing. And in the military, you write in a very particular way, but I think like it teaches you how to think more often. Like it believe it or not, it teaches you, if you're listening, it teaches you how to empathize, because it's really important to consider how other people are thinking. If you are going to make a good combat decision, you have to be able to put yourself in your enemy's frame of mind, in their shoes, in their geography, and like you have to know them just as well as you know yourself. And then obviously you have to know your guys, and you have to know where they're at, and yeah, you have to be able to empathize. And I think the best writers are the best empathizers.
That is fascinating. Do you still talk to, is it Mr. Iverson?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do you still talk to him?
I do, yeah. I probably need to give him a call next week, but I talked to him a few weeks ago. I sent him a bunch of books and stuff, and it's so funny when I reconnected with him. I don't know, one of these times he starts talking, and we started talking very philosophically about different things, and I'm like a baby brain compared to him, and he's like, have you read much Descartes? And I'm like, no, but and I'm just like, can you just like teach me more, man? And like I just wish I could just sit in a desk and have him up there and lecturing me, and I'm just taking notes. I just would love it. But I just love that. I just love listening to smart people talk. It's awesome.
What constant? Because he's a good man, right? If he's in your life, he's probably a decent man. What is some simple breakdowns, some characteristics of what constitutes a good man, and what does it look like to you?
I think
is there a checklist?
Yeah, I wish there was a checklist. I'll just do this. But we talked about like balancing masculine and feminine energy, and I think that a good man is balanced. Almost always they have a balanced energy. But a good man is probably someone who cares about something more than himself, has a mission in life, has a purpose, is seeking to fulfill that purpose, and is a protector of others as much as he can be, takes care of himself. Like all of these are like, I'm just kind of saying what's coming to my head, but I think there's like a lot of like thoughtfulness in good men. I think that good men are usually a little bit more quiet than not good men. They're not as quick to judge, for sure. They probably follow those 4 agreements, They're precise with their words. They don't judge. They don't assume. They always try their hardest. I think, they're usually well read. And I think like a commonality is like really good men, like they do have claws. Like they are capable of. Are you familiar with what was his name? Lieutenant Colonel, I think Grossman. He did the sheep wolves and sheepdogs. No, really cool speech. I forget where he gave it. I think it was Grossman, but he talked about the difference between sheep. Like most people in the world are sheep, and they're incapable of really defending themselves. They're incapable of violence, is what he was saying. then there's wolves who are violent for violence sake, basically, and they take what they need and take what they want. But then there's the sheepdog, and the sheepdog is the one dog who is not a wolf, does not have the same ferocity or the same claws, the same teeth as a wolf, but puts itself, its lone self, between the sheep and the wolves and the pack of wolves, and this like courage and this bravery and those qualities of a sheepdog. I mean, I think that's what we, good men would try to strive to be, and we won't always get there. We will come up short often, but the point is in the pursuit. It's not in the outcome. It's in the pursuit of it.
Do you feel like, because there are like some men who are just genetically, some might be smaller, some might be bigger, some might be more athletic, but in general they take care of themselves, and they take care of themselves in order to take care of others. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, in order to take care of others, you have to take care of yourself on all levels, on physical, mental, and spiritual levels.
Do you think you need in order to get to that spiritual health, do you think you need a fitter body? Do you think you need a fitter physiological vessel, if you will, in order to get a little bit healthier with the chemistry and all that? Or is there a way to bypass that? Or you think all three have to be pretty synchronized to be what is considered health?
I think the thing that is arguable is like the definition of fitness, like, and health. Like if you look at some of like the gurus and the really enlightened people, I'm thinking of like Ram Dass in particular, like very skinny, don't eat much. They're not going to stand a chance in the weight room, but that's okay. And so all of it's okay. It's just about like where the individual is like mechanically at in their head. And but yeah, like health is important. Physical health is very important. And for most people, and granted too, it's 2025, and it's like the way that we interact with the external world is via our ego. And it's that relationship with our ego that's really important. And part of that is how we present ourselves to the world. And so if we present ourselves as sloppy, don't care, which like shows me, right, that there's something else going on, right? There's some sort of like feeling buried, like whether it's shame or guilt or something that hasn't been dealt with, to make me not take care of myself and to, eat things I shouldn't. And like, we'll have all sorts of reasons and sometimes excuses that we tell ourselves, but those are narratives of the ego that are trying to protect us from feeling what the real problem is, and so we hide it with food, or we hide it with alcohol, right, and like, or whatever substance, and we're not able to be kind of honest. But I do think, generally speaking, physical fitness is an amazing gateway into self-development and work on yourself, but we have to be careful that it's not another pursuit of the ego, and that we're doing it for the right reasons, to take care of ourselves and others the best that we can, and to put our best foot forward, not to, be, I'm not saying that like looking sexy is a bad thing. It's not, it's fine. But like the whole point of it can't be like, oh, I want to like turn heads and, and it becomes this practice of vanity.
Did you see that? That's funny you said that. I just wrote about that. Did you see that? I just wrote, I think I said something along the lines of, your beauty will be shown outwardly by what did I say? Oh my gosh, I forgot. But I do know I ended it with, beauty becomes vain when it lacks function, which in function and vanity just don't align. People can't just be self-concerned and conceited with their training, because I feel like many actions and I feel like that is a habitual way of thinking. If I'm doing action in order for myself, I probably translate that elsewhere. I've always been curious, and also I feel like there's a big thing right now where most men have found a way to say, why would I work out? That's dumb. I'll do it in 10 years. Also, I go to the bars every Saturday. Yeah. And have you had issues with that? I mean, actually, I don't know if I mentioned this either, but you just moved to Oklahoma City. How has it been in a new city, figuring out finding good men. And, is that something that you've had a hard time finding in OKC, or how does that work for you?
I wouldn't even say that I'm like looking for it. It's funny. I always tell my wife, like, I'm all friended up. I don't need any more friends. But when they come, right? And then you pay attention, or I try at least. And so yeah, I found a couple people here, a couple friends. But I'm really blessed to have so many great men in my life already, and they're all over the map. So I see them as often as I can, and it's really important to me that I see them and I talk to them and just do the best that I can do. But it's not a priority of mine to to find good men. I like reading good men. I like listening to them, and I try to do that as much as I can. And then I just try to practice myself as well. But no, moving to Oklahoma was wonderful from Arizona. Like, we knew we just had to get out of the city. For many reasons, but it was so much easier with that environment change for me, at least, to change some of my behaviors, particularly surrounding alcohol, and not being stuck in the same routine, but that took a massive leap of faith, a huge leap of faith to leave my business, to leave my friends, to leave all these people. And a lot of people had a lot of problems with it, and that's okay. They're entitled to that. That's okay. I had to do it for myself. I had to do it for my family. I knew what kind of path I was on, and I had to change it. And so, not saying that that's I'm not trying to toot my own horn. It just is what it is. And I think a lot of people limit their thinking that I could never do that. Everything that I have is here, and so we become attached to XYZ things, which prevents us from making the change that we need to change in order to get closer to ourselves and get closer to our purpose.
Yeah, you said, people kind of get stuck. I feel like sometimes you would hear the phrase, why would you move? Essentially, everywhere you go, there you are.
Yeah.
And in some cases, escapism's not the answer, but, why can't it be true that if you make a calculated decision for yourself and you have legitimate reasons why it can benefit, and it does benefit, then it's probably a good decision. So sometimes you can't take everything, you have to be able to think outside of the box. You can't just take everything and I feel like social media does that, especially with fitness, but maybe philosophy too. People take things and they immediately put it as if it, it fits this routine of thought, and they just plug and play with freaking phrases, and that's this exacting, and it has to be exactly that way. For me, Phoenix, I think Phoenix on the grand scale, on a professional sense, in some ways I felt like a failure, but also it was exactly what I needed to become a better man, meet the people I needed to meet for the rest of my life, and figure out how to not make the same mistakes again. So moving for me also worked out, and then we made it to Nashville, the land of the tornadoes, which have had more than Oklahoma this year, just so you're aware. I don't know how scary that is for you guys, but it's been pretty wild. But yeah, man, I've always been you've caught me on a lot of stuff. I used to quote a lot. I think there's a lot of ways of thinking that have helped me get to where I'm at, and then there is time where it's okay, here's what's next. So, you will call me out sometimes and say, but why couldn't it be this way? Why couldn't you just think a little bit more, almost clearly? Almost the generalization and the gentle approach of thinking means it doesn't have to be a hard truth. There can be many truths, and then there's probably one that best supports you. I think you do a really good job at that. I think you communicate it really well. But
I love the saying that there's room in the truth for more than one thing. And if there's one thing that's wrong with so many people's frame of thought right now, it's that we have become so binary, and it's one or the other. It's never one or the other. Rarely anything is black and white. It's there's so much room in the middle for so much of both of these things, and particularly in fitness or politics, or name a touchy subject on the internet. Look at any viral video in the comments, and it's an argument. Every single one of them is an argument, and it's just that style of communication is not real. It's not effective. It's not helpful, and it doesn't showcase any sort of intelligence whatsoever. Like being able to like pick and like cherry pick facts and like defend something like in a line of text is such a false way of living. And there's this idea, we have endless amounts of knowledge at our fingertips, and this is from Ram Dass. He's like, he was a Harvard professor. He's like this brilliant man, and he's like, I was getting really good at playing the role of professor, and my students were getting really good at playing the role of student. And that's what's happening here, is like we've collected so much what we think is knowledge, but we have very little wisdom.
When you said the fitness thing, that is the most frustrating thing for me. You've seen it. People like chase letters and certifications and all that shit all the time, and then all of a sudden they just wire into whatever cert they got, and that's their only identification and coaching style. And it's like, man, human beings, at least, and I'm speaking just functionally, it's like every sport that's played is so incredibly complex, and there's so many movements and patterns, and tissue requires so many different contraction capabilities, and your tendons and ligaments have to be strong enough to support different joint angles. And it's like, how often, and you've seen this too, but why is it that everything is fit into a box? And okay, I think we're kind of pushing the limits in our own training right now. We're kind of like, we're getting weird in our exploration of it. But I mean, fitness is a good example of how these people have an identification issue. And
the reason why is because it sells. And like the first thing that you learn when you're trying to like sell something online is to niche down. And it's like, niche down, make it stand out in this niche, because that's what picks up, that's what generates leads, and that's what sells. And so it literally is all about money, unfortunately. And that's the same thing, whatever industry you want to explore, it's about money, unfortunately.
Yeah, I experienced that with I worked with a sports medicine chiropractor, and he was very into the TPI world, and it was just gnarly I'm not I can like sale. I do a good job at telling people, this is what you're going to get, this is how I can help you improve your life, and I have the knowledge base and the human connection to back that up. But it is crazy when people bullshit people and say just like things that aren't true. The laser stuff, I'm sure, has some benefit, but it's so frustrating when people are just like, oh yeah, I had this blue laser pointed at my kneecap for 12 hours and it fixed me. It's like, oh Jesus, it's like, okay, I can't stand the snake oil, man. How do you feel? Do you feel like there's any snake oil? I bet there is. And I guess you're in a new world now. You're kind of in a new branch of like business. Like, what is snake oil on your end?
Yeah, I'm still figuring it out. I'm trying to judge less and to just kind of be with what I've got. But it definitely exists, and I think like there's like in this like realm of like, because what I do, I don't know how to put myself into a box. Like I don't really know. I'm so interested in so many things, and for some people, like fitness is the answer. For some people, like identifying childhood trauma is the answer, and like in order to get through it. And there's so many different things to approach coaching with. But I think like all of it is tied to finding a purpose that's bigger than yourself. And I think a lot of these people that are coaches, that are life coaches, and especially in the plant medicine space, they've gone and done a ceremony or 3 or 100 or whatever, and they become like these spiritual narcissists, and they like these spiritual bypassing is a good term for it, and they kind of like wield their spirituality like this like moral superiority, like it makes them better, and it gives them this right to tell people how it is. And I really think that's unfortunate, and it's just like it's your ego dressing up as in a different suit, and just expressing it in a different way. And I don't know if there's like snake oil thing. I don't know if I can picture like a certain product that's being sold right now, but I just see that a lot because a lot of people, they don't have anything tangible to show for their work that they've been doing. And whether that is, and really at the end of the day, it's it's peace, right? Like it's peace with themselves. It's a mind at peace. That to me is like the end state. Like, you know, I can get there no matter what, hopefully, right? I'm not saying I'm saying like the universal you can get there, you know, no matter what. You can get to this place of peace in your mind. But there's a lot of people that have ostracized their families and are unable to show love to people that don't speak in the same terminology as they do. And to me, that suggests that they are not spiritual people. You know, they have quite a bit of work to do, actually.
Yeah, it's like it's a little bit of virtue signaling. Certainly. And yeah, it can be very frustrating. I bet it's very frustrating for people who maybe who maybe don't have like a fitness background and a strong knowledge base and a strong sense of at least like their anatomical self. You know, I think we are kind of lucky that we had found that, and that's what we've used at least as a gateway to at least we have a tool and we can get to ourselves whenever we need to. Today I had to, and I had a spiritual experience with my legs today from that program. But I bet it's very frustrating for people who don't have that, and they hear a lot of things, and they have people trying to convince them rather than help them, and everything's convincing. Or it's almost like the communication today it's telling. You know, it's people are speaking at people. You know, well, why are you doing this? This is exactly how you should do it, and this is why you should, dare I say it, stay hard. You know, it's, oh man, yeah, I can't stand it, and I need to get to a point where you're at, and just be like, it's fine, you know.
Well, I'm not totally to that point.
Okay.
Don't let me fool you, right? Like, it is very frustrating, and it's like this instant thing that comes in my head. I'm like, oh, it's just so, like, you know, and I have to vent about it sometimes, but I'm better at like engaging with those thoughts now. I don't let it like eat me up, and if that makes sense.
So I have a lot of people who listen. I guess the scale is, I have some like professional athletes who listen. I have professional strength conditioning coaches. I have people over the age of 80 who are like just starting their fitness journey. You know, what is something that you think is stopping them, or what is a good first step they can take to using movement, fitness, writing, right? Just an actionable thing. Where is it they can look? What is something they can do today that will help them on their journey of bettering their life, becoming healthier, taking a step that is scary, and yeah.
I think this is going to sound so generalized, but pursuing either gratitude or curiosity or some combination of the two. It's like, what are you most grateful for? Like, take a second and like breathe deep, like take a big breath through your nose, and you're like, what am I grateful for? Like, what, like so many things in my life, you know? And like, when's the last time you actually like interacted with your breath and like, oh, okay, like maybe I'm just grateful for my breath and that I can breathe and that I'm here. Holy shit, what a gift. And then it's like, I'm so grateful for my wife or my kids or my job, or like, you know, like this connection of dots that has led me to this point, or whatever experience is something. And if that's not there, then curiosity can be. Because like, we're not always going to be grateful about everything in our lives, and like, but curiosity is, and it's like, what am I curious about? And if you're not curious about anything, then we need to regulate our nervous system more, because like, curiosity is so natural. It's such a natural part about being a boy in particular, like being a young boy and just being curious about the world and be like, oh my gosh. And if maybe that's something that we need to tap into a little bit more, like get a little bit of that boyishness back. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, we don't have to kill that boy. And then I think like, to kind of take that a step further, it's like, I think it's like pursuing your edge. And that doesn't mean like, it's like, you know, I was talking to Iris about this, my wife, and she had this brilliant analogy. She's like, it's like threshold training for, you know, strength and conditioning. And she's like, you know, like that's how you get better at anything, is you train at your threshold all the time. And it doesn't matter, like, it doesn't matter what your edge is. Like, it doesn't matter how far you're going to go. It doesn't matter the distance that you're going to go. It matters that you're pursuing it, and it matters the direction that you're going. And like, that's what's going to give you purpose. And so it doesn't mean that you have to, like, okay, I'm going all in on black and just gamble. Like, that's not what this is. It's like being honest about yourself and being like, am I doing anything that is currently going on in my life right now? Am I doing it the way that I want to do it? And if I'm not, then that's okay. We don't have to invite any kind of shame, any kind of guilt in there. Like, it's okay. Like, we're not perfect, we're human. And it's like, okay, now what? Like, okay, how can I change it a little bit? Like, how can I move into this, like, conscious competence realm, you know? And how can I pursue my edge a little bit more, like today? And then you get better at it and better at it, and like acceptance comes with that, and then endurance comes with that, and then like stuff starts opening up, and you're like, oh my gosh, like then it's way easier to be grateful, and then it's way easier to be curious, and it's like, it's this beautiful, like positive feedback loop that happens, rather than this negative feedback loop of, like, you know, addiction or hiding or like non-acceptance. We get out of that negative feedback loop into a positive one, where I start doing things that like make me happy, that make me filled up and filled with joy, and then I want to keep doing them because it makes me feel good, and so I keep doing them, and then it's like this beautiful positive feedback loop that we encourage in our lives. And so I do think it comes from like pursuing your edge, and like that sounds so simple, but for someone who's stuck, it's not simple at all. It's so difficult, and something is usually blocking us. And so it's kind of like discovering that blockage. And so it's finding someone that you trust, and someone hopefully with a little bit of knowledge that can like kind of just hold a space for you and let you talk it out on your own, and not put ideas into your head and like project their feelings on you. Which is a really hard thing to find. But don't stop searching. Don't stop searching like for that edge. I think that's probably it.
This is something that I've learned since hanging out with, I'd say men, and just, I think I've become a bit more strict with who I hang out with and who I choose to, you know what, I'm going to touch on this. I said this earlier, where we were talking about just like friendships and OKC. I think a lot of people are like, I want community. And it's like, do you? Because it actually requires a lot of work, and you have to put so much energy into people, and it is not easy. And I have not done as good of a job as you. Like, you're gonna drive down here to Nashville. I'm like, man, sorry, dude. You know, but that's true. You put so much energy into people, and it's not easy. And like, community takes work, and that is movement. And also, it's harder to make those efforts when you're maybe not physiologically healthy. And then also, like, you aren't rooted in yourself, and there's not movement elsewhere going on. You've not jumped the side of the coin of shame. And I think a tool that I've used, and I know you've used it too, but fitness, at least for me, has been, the more fit I am, there's a capacity, but most of us have not reached it. The more fit you are, the greater the scale or the opportunity of experiences you get to use to pursue things that get closer to your spirituality, and things that kind of spark your curiosity. Sometimes it's hard to get to these things, places, and ideas when you're not capable of getting there. You know, you've probably been in the mountains before. You know this. It's like, okay, if you're in the deep, dark, treacherous land of the mountains, and you're like looking up at the sky, it's like, well, there's nothing more surreal and empowering than that. It's like your safe place. And speaking of, we have to go on a hunting trip this next year. That would be lovely. Yeah. But yeah, man, I think so many people, there's like so many tools we have, and it's so funny how the opportunity of choice almost makes everyone paralyzed.
And just to kind of dovetail that, it's like, you know, moving your body, taking care of yourself, it's like the first expression of gratitude, that you have this shell of a body that you get to take care of, you know, and that like you were given this, like for whatever reason you were given this, whatever you believe, and you get to take care of it. And like that's what an immediate way to be grateful for that is to take care of it. Try to take care of it. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be perfect. You're not going to be freaking Arnold Schwarzenegger. You're not going to be whatever. You're not going to be some NFL athlete. That's okay. Like just do the best you can for what you have. Like we don't need to compare or anything like that. It's like the first step towards gratitude and self-love is just taking care of this body. Just move it little by little. You don't have to do everything overnight. You just have to do a tiny little bit.
Do you feel like when you're not as in shape, and this is just your physical body, but do you feel like you can tell when your head is like more dark gray and I'm gonna say depressed, but from like a scientific level, this like you're emotionally depressed or suppressed is maybe a better way to say it. Do you feel like when you are not dialed into you that you are more likely to be there, or have you seen that correlation, or how do you approach that?
Certainly. I mean, definitely. And the first thing that came to mind is leading up to a ceremony. We go on a dieta, and it's like a very, very restrictive diet with like nothing pickled, nothing, all natural, all whole foods, no salt, no extra spices. You can use herbs, no red meat, no anything, no garbage whatsoever. And I've been really, really strict with it the last couple of times, and especially this last time. I don't think I messed up. I think I did really well, and for the first time. And man, my mental clarity was like off the charts. I could totally tell the difference, and I'm like, man, this is really powerful, And I think I'm getting closer, right? Like I'm moving into that like conscious competence phase, like, and I'm able to stay a little bit more consistent with it, and like keep flexing that muscle and getting a little bit better without putting like too much pressure on it. But 100%. And I hate when I'm like injured. It's really hard. We talk about acceptance. Like it's really difficult for me to accept when I don't feel strong and I don't feel capable and I don't feel like myself. It's a really hard thing to move through. Yeah.
What do you do when you're injured? How do you approach it?
I talk to Bo. I ask Bo what to do.
There you go.
I mean, it's I just do my best, Like I just don't stop moving. You can't stop. Like a lot of people, like, oh my gosh, like, you go to the doctor and they'll be like, well, don't go to the gym. Don't, like, that's not the answer. There's always something you can do. Movement is the thing. Like, I don't care if you've torn your biceps and you're in a sling. Like, you can do legs, you can do stuff, you can move your body, you can walk, you can always do something. The right answer is always something. And so I've had quite a few different injuries between like dislocated shoulders, torn labrums, torn rotator cuffs, torn hamstrings, broken collarbone, broken jaw. I've had quite a few little things happen to me, and like you just can't stop. Like you're gonna get weaker. You're not gonna be able to do the same stuff you did before. That's okay. It sucks, but it's okay. And you just gotta keep going. Do your best.
Yeah, it's move or die.
Move or die.
Yeah, that's probably true spiritually. It's definitely true physiologically. It's like if you're not at least having some form of stimulus to your muscles, they will deteriorate, especially after you age. Past the age of 35, that is scientifically certain that's going to happen. And movement essentially keeps you at where you're at. If you want to get stronger, you have to actually it needs something, a stimulus that warrants some legitimate strength adaptations. And then I'm assuming, this is me assuming, but I'm assuming spiritually, if you're not working on yourself and you're not asking hard questions, that's probably true as well.
I would assume so as well, yeah. I had a client, she was amazing, gosh, I loved working with her. I worked with her for like 8 or 9 years. She was 81 when we stopped working together. She's still training, golfs like 2 or 3 times a week. She's awesome. And I think it was her aunt, she worked on a farm forever, and she was like 100 and something years old when Nedra was my client. She went and talked to her, and she goes like, how do you do it? Like, what do you, like, how are you so healthy? And her aunt is like, she's like, you do 2 things. She's like, if you want to live as long as I do 2 things. Never go to the doctor and never stop moving. And I thought that was pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think I've said this stat on here before. I think there was a study like in 2007, like 42% of doctors were overweight. I think almost all of them were found to have some form of bias in how they consult their patients, and they tell them to stop doing things. And I'm sure human nature. There's probably some bias involved because we're selfish by nature, and we're all trying to fix that. Rich, here's a question. I asked you before we started this thing, have you ever been on here and not touched on what you want to? Is there anything else you want to touch on?
Man, we did a good job today. This was so fun.
This was solid. Yeah.
I mean, I do want to say I love you. I really do. I'm so proud of you. I'm proud to know you. I love listening to everything that you do. I am very, very grateful that you're in my life. I definitely want to make sure I say that. I really love watching your journey. I think so many people don't do what you're doing, and I just love seeing it. It makes me so happy. I'm proud of you, man.
Love you too, dude. It's awesome. Here's what I want to do. You are a brother, a man who you have seen life in a completely different lens, and you have seen it in I would say a more violent way. You have seen life in a more spiritual way, and I would say that is for the majority of human beings. How does Richard Mulder, a man who is just like everyone else, a human being, but has a different story, what is some advice that Richard Mulder can give? 3 things today people can take with them. What are those 3 random words of advice that you have for them?
Well, we've been saying them all day already. The first one is gratitude, for sure. Gratitude all the time. When you wake up, when you go to sleep, like if you are a praying person, then pray about it. If you are a thinking person, then think about it. Like gratitude as much as you can, invite it into your life. It's such a powerful thing for us. Curiosity is the second. Curiosity will never lead you astray. Like, it's not curiosity killed the cat. That's what they say to keep kids down and not pursuing things, right? Like, you're an adult now. Like, it's okay to be curious about things, like pursuing things. Like, you've got this chance. And so, like, if you're curious about something, explore it. Like, that's what makes life so amazing. And invite gratitude into your life that you get to explore things like that. It's so cool. And I think, like, if there's something that you know is preventing you from being a better person or like the best version of yourself, like for me it was alcohol, big time. And there's still many things that I'm working on. There's many things, but that was my biggest problem. And if you can recognize something in your life that is blocking you from being better, it's okay to start welcoming honesty about that into your life and seeing, like, giving yourself a shot at changing that. Like, you don't have to accept anything. Like, you can, like, the idea that you can't change is fed to you from other people all throughout your life. And all you have to do is take a knee and just go inside as long as it takes. Like, be patient and just be honest with yourself. And also be okay with accepting failure and understand that that's part of the process, and it's so easy to freaking say, and it's so hard to do. But that, like, understanding that, like, don't let failure stop you from trying to, the idea of failure stop you from trying to pursue something. Because, like, even if you fail, like you said, Arizona, right? Like I thought about it as a failure for a long time, but it's like, I met the love of my life there. Like, that's not failure. That's like the most epic thing that could happen, And it's like, all of these failures, like, we don't know better than the universe. Like, the universe knows way better than we do. And so if we can slow down and breathe with it a little bit and just take the good with the bad, as hard as that is sometimes, man, that is like the most powerful thing we can do.
Love it. Well, that just goes to show, guys, talk to the right people. Rich is your guy. Check him out at Apricus Coaching Initiative. Is that your website?
Yeah, you go to apricuscoaching.com. You can follow me on Instagram _Rich Mulder, MULDER, and all the links are after that. So,
he is a lover, leader, and one of my best friends. And guys, if you're ever curious about any of those things Rich was talking about, please hit him up. And I think we'll probably have to do this again. I think I had too much fun. And it's very surreal the fact we're doing this because he was my boss at some point, and now he is quite literally one of my best friends. So with that being said, my friends, this was episode 10, and we're out of here.
Thanks, brother.
Whoa, Black Creek.